Hello everybody. I'm sorry I cannot be here live with you today, but I hope I can still make myself clear through this video presentation. My presentation is about the game of diplomacy, which I have been using for my PhD research, and how we might use it for the next ANAC competition. So let me first give you an introduction to this game. Diplomacy is a game for 7 players. It was invented as a classical board game in the 1950s. And it is still widely played all over the world nowadays, although it is mostly played over the internet now. Just like chess and checkers, it's a completely deterministic game. That is, there are no dice or cards to draw, so everything is completely determined by the actions of the players. However, what distinguishes this game from other games is that the players are in fact allowed to form coalitions and to secretly negotiate their actions with each other. In fact, the game is set up in such a way that if you try to play it by yourself without teaming up with any other player, then it's almost impossible to win. The game takes place on a map of Europe in the early 20th century, which is divided into provinces. Each player plays one of the 7 great powers of that time, which are England, France, Germany, Italy, Turkey, Russia, and Austria. And each player has a number of armies or fleet which move across the map and can be used to conquer provinces. When you lose all your provinces, then you are eliminated. The ultimate goal of the game is for one player to conquer more than half of the provinces, which we call a solo victory. However, the players may also agree to end the game in a draw, which is very common if there are only 2 or 3 players left, because all the others have been eliminated, and none of the remaining players thinks it is possible to achieve a solo victory. In a sense, we can say that a game of diplomacy takes place on 2 different levels. The first is a tactical level, which involves the players ordering their armies and fleets across the map to conquer provinces. On this level, all the actions of the players are restricted by a well-defined set of rules, just like in any other game. The most interesting part of the game, however, takes place at the second level, which is the negotiation level. Every round, before the players make their moves, they have the chance to privately discuss with the other players what they will do. They can negotiate their actions and discuss their strategies. This allows coalitions of players to conspire against the other players. Unlike the tactical level, at the negotiation level, everything is possible and there are no rules whatsoever. Players can form coalitions with whoever they want, they can make agreements about whatever they want, and they are even allowed to lie or to break their promises. Typical agreements that players may make are demilitarized zones, which means that 2 or more players agree that none of them will invade a certain province. Or a joint attack, meaning that one player will support another player to attack a certain province. Now, what makes this a very interesting test case for automated negotiations, in my opinion, is that there are no directly defined utility functions over the set of possible deals. Instead, your utility only depends on your agreements indirectly. When you make an agreement, this partially restricts the actions that you and your coalition partners can make, and this in turn influences the outcome of the game. So to predict the effect of your agreements on the outcome of the game is a very hard problem, which involves game theory and constraint satisfaction. Moreover, unlike many other negotiation domains, diplomacy also involves coalition formation and trust. In order to do scientific research on diplomacy and make it easy to implement diplomacy playing agents, my colleague Angela Fabregas has created the DIP game framework at the AAA Institute in Barcelona. This framework consists of a set of Java classes that represent the tactical aspects of the game, such as the provinces and the units, and it contains classes to handle the connection between the player and the game server. Furthermore, it provides a communication server for the negotiations between the players, and it comes with a special language for negotiations. I myself have used the DIP game framework for my PhD research. I have created a player called D-Brain, and with this player I won the first computer diplomacy challenge at the 2016 ICGA Computer Olympiad. But Although the tactical part of the player was implemented in DipGame, I found the negotiation language of DipGame too complicated. So for the negotiations, I used my own negotiation framework. I call this framework Bandana, which stands for Basic Environment for Diplomacy Playing Automated Negotiating Agents. This framework is still based on the DipGame framework for the tactical aspects of the game, but for the negotiations, it provides an alternative negotiation server and a highly simplified negotiation language. Furthermore, I have included the tactical component of dbrain into the framework, which means that people who want to do research on negotiations can simply write a negotiation algorithm on top of dbrain, so that they don't have to worry about the tactical aspects of the game. And also I have added some classes to make it easier to set up a tournament. Now let me present my ideas for the ANAC competition. My idea is that participants will implement a negotiation algorithm on top of dbrain using the Bandana framework. The players can only negotiate which moves they will make with their units or which provinces they wish to demilitarize. And when they make such an agreement, dbrain will automatically play the best set of moves it can find which are compatible with those agreements. So the participants do not have to implement any algorithm for the tactical aspects of the game. And the reason for this is that this would simply be much too time consuming for the participants. I can tell you from my own experience that doing this is very hard. Moreover, the competition should only be about negotiations, and if each participant applies different tactics, then I think the tactical part could have too much influence on the game. Another important point is that your chances to win the game depend a lot on which of the great powers you play. It is much easier, for example, to win with Russia than to win with Austria. Therefore, we need to let the participants play a lot of games, each time with a different assignment of the great powers to the participants. And we can then use some kind of point system to determine the overall winner. An example of such a point system would be the following one, which is commonly used. If the game ends with a solo victory for one player, then that player gets 12 points. If it ends in a draw between two players, then each of them gets 6 points. If there is a three-way draw, then each survivor gets 4 points. And if there's a four-way draw, then each gets 3 points. And in all cases, all other eliminated players get 0 points. The Bandana framework comes with a default negotiation protocol, but this can be changed. This protocol is a multilateral protocol, obviously, because coalitions often involve more than two players, and each proposal can involve any number of players. It is a protocol without turn-taking, which means that any agent can make a proposal or accept a proposal whenever it wants. The protocol involves a special agent, which I call the notary agent, which monitors the negotiations and sends a confirmation message whenever a certain proposal has been accepted by all agents involved in the deal. A deal is only considered officially closed once the notary has sent this confirmation message. The reason for the notary is that sometimes agents may receive certain messages in a different order because of delays in the network, which may influence the question which proposal was accepted and which not. Therefore, the notary acts as the authority that officially determines which proposals are accepted. One issue I talked about before is the issue of trust, because in diplomacy, in principle, the players are allowed to break their promises. So the question is whether we also want this to be true for the competition. I should note that the existing game servers do not provide any options to enforce agreements or verify that made agreements are consistent with each other. But there are indirect ways how we can enforce such agreements. Let me suggest 3 possible solutions. The first would be to simply allow players to break their promises, as is usual in the game of diplomacy, which means that the agent can choose which of its agreements it wants to obey, and when dbrain determines which moves to make, it will only take those agreements into account. This means that trust becomes a major issue in the competition, which is a very new thing to ANAC. The second option would be that dbrain automatically obeys all agreements that are confirmed by the notary. unless these agreements are inconsistent with each other, in which case dbrain will randomly select a consistent subset of the agreements and only obey those. It is then up to the agent to make sure that it doesn't happen and that it only accepts agreements that are consistent with earlier made agreements. Trust still plays a role in this case because agents may make inconsistent agreements, either intentional or not. The third option would again be that dbrain automatically executes all agreements confirmed by the notary, but we implement the notary such that it will only confirm agreements that are consistent with earlier agreements. This will require some effort, however, because I still need to implement this option. Anyway, I have uploaded the Bandana framework to this address. It is not entirely finished yet, and it probably still has a number of bugs, but in general it works. So you can find it there, and it contains everything necessary to start implementing agents, except the game server, which should be downloaded separately, but you can find instructions on how to do that. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. For more information, I can refer you to my website or to this email address.